Good morning. I'm Jennifer McKelvey. I am Chair of Scarborough Community Council. I will be chairing today's meeting. The clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I will call meeting 26 to order. Welcome, everyone. Today's meeting is being held by video conference. City staff are also connected to the meeting by video conference. The public continue to participate electronically and can watch the meeting stream live on YouTube at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. These meeting measures are necessary to comply with public health guidelines and prevent the spread of COVID-19. I ask everyone for their patience with any delays and technical issues. The clerk staff have connected all registered speakers to the meeting by audio. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Scarborough Community Council's page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Clerk's IT staff will be available to assist members with their devices. I would like to remind staff to keep their mics muted and their videos turned off unless they need to answer questions or speak to those on the committee. This will make it easier for me as chair and for those watching on YouTube to observe members as they participate in debate and vote on items. Members, please keep your mic muted unless you wish to question staff or speak to an item, and ensure that your video is turned on. As part of each agenda item, I will ask members to raise their hand or unmute their mic if they wish to question staff or speak. I will then create a speakers list and will call on members when it is their turn to speak. When voting on an item or a motion, I ask that members ensure their video is on and raise their hand to indicate their vote. Members, I want to remind you that you must still submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at scc@toronto.ca to help with motions. Although we are in different locations and meeting remotely today, the committee would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you have an interest, please raise your hand or unmute your mic and indicate the number and the nature of the interest. Seeing none, may I have a motion to confirm the minutes from our last meeting on June 25th, 2021? Councillor Ainsley, all those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. I understand that we have one piece of new business. May I please have a motion to add it to the agenda? Councillor Thompson? Okay, that will be displayed.
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Okay, that will be displayed on the CMP. Do you just want to give us briefly what that is?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. Yes, so this is an item that's covered by Chapter 925, permit parking on Jolly Way. And this is a matter of new business because there's a need to amend Chapter 925, Section 1B to permit this instead. And this matter has to be dealt with by Community Council in order for this matter to go to Council, I guess, in October.
Sorry, my mic wasn't on. We'll vote on introducing that. All those in favor? All those opposed? That will now be displayed for a vote later. We have
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We have 25 speakers today. As always, Scarborough Community Council welcomes hearing from our members of the public, either in writing or as deputants at our meeting. Hearing from the public is a very important part of how our local representative democracy works. We also appreciate that individuals may be passionate about and committed to their views on a given subject, and that you may want to convey this at Community Council. Members of this committee are also passionate about Scarborough and the people who live here. However, as chair of this committee, I will not tolerate inflammatory language as part of any deputation. If deputants conduct themselves in this manner, they will not be permitted to continue speaking. Local representative democracy works only when we remain civil and express our views in respect of the issues in front of us, and not in respect of any individual or group of individuals. Accordingly, I'd like to remind all deputants to respect our local representative democracy, the members of this community council, and all those who appear before this community council, and address the issues before us in a respectful, civil manner. Now, on with our meeting. We will do the agenda. So SC 26.1, final report, 66 and 80 Dale Avenue, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application, Ward 24. We have 10 deputants on this item. I will hold. SC 26.2, final report, 7 7437, 7439, and 7441 Kingston Road zoning amendment application. Ward 25, we have 3 deputants. I will hold. SC 26.3 final report, 971 to 979 Warden Avenue part lot control exemption application. Councillor Thompson.
I can move that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. SC 26.4 status update report, Coronation Drive employment area planning and transportation review, Ward 25. I will hold as there is 1 deputant. SC 26.5 preliminary report, 54 to 62 Glen Everest Road zoning bylaw amendment and rental housing demolition applications, Ward 20. I will hold as there are 2 deputants. SC 26.6 preliminary report, 3315 Midland Avenue zoning amendment application, Ward 23. Councillor Lai.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone. I move staff recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Lai. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. That brings us to SC 26.7 preliminary report, 40 and 42 Tuxedo Court zoning amendment application. Councillor Ainsley.
Speaker, I will be moving the recommendations in the report, and I also have an amendment that the clerk has that I think is a quick amendment. I'm basically asking for a community consultation meeting and also the establishment of a working group. Tuxedo Court currently has 5 apartment buildings in it. This application is basically asking for 2 more apartment buildings to be put in the middle of those 5, replacing commercial tenants, one a pharmacy, the other one a variety store. Both serve the entire community, and I think not having them there personally will be a huge loss for the community. So I would like to hear more from the community. I've also heard similar concerns voiced, so I'm moving this amendment and ask for everybody's support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ainsley. All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? That amendment carries. We'll vote on the item. Item is amended. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. That brings us to SC 26.8 preliminary road, 4121 Kingston Road zoning amendment application, Ward 24. Councillor Ainsley.
I am moving the recommendations.
Thank you. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. SC 26.9 preliminary report, 25 Sewells Road and 182 to 250 Brennan Way zoning bylaw amendment application in Ward 25. I'm prepared to move staff recommendations on this. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. SC 26.10 assumption of services registered plan 66M-2513 55 Macfrost Way, Twin Flower Court, Calixico Holdings, Ward 23. Councillor Lai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move staff recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Lai. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. SC 26.11 residential demolition application 1620 Military Trail, Ward 25. I'm prepared to move option 3, which is the demolition with conditions. Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. SC 26.12 designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880 fire routes 75 Malvern Street, 1 to 55 Guilds Pathway, 1075 Alfred Crescent. So this is in wards 23, 24, 25. Councillor Lai, Councillor Ainsley, and myself. Anyone like to hold this item? Anyone like to move staff recommendations? Councillor Ainsley, all those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. SC 26.13 changes to the crossroads of the Danforth Business Improvement Area Board of Management, Ward 20. Councillor Crawford.
I'll move staff recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. SC 26.14, Morningside Avenue, St. Clair Avenue East, and Warden Avenue speed limit bylaw revisions. I will hold as there is one deputant. SC 26.15, Construction Staging Area, 1236 Birchmount Road. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have an amendment to recommendation number 4. Maybe just ask staff to put it on the screen. And it would read that City Council direct the applicant to sweep, pressure wash the construction site and adjacent sidewalks and roadways daily or more frequently as needed to be cleared of any construction debris and also make safe for the residents and for the community as a whole.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed?
Thank you.
The amendment carries. The item is amended. All those in favor? All those opposed? The item carries. 2616 on-street accessible parking, Robinson Avenue, Ward 20, Councillor Crawford.
I'll move recommendations, please.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. SC 26.17, parking amendment, Woodland Park Road, Ward 20, Councillor Crawford.
Again, move staff recommendations.
All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. SC 2618, traffic calming, Courcelette Road, Ward 20, Councillor Crawford.
Again, move staff recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. SC 2619, application for fence exemption, 64 Grey Lawn Crescent, Ward 21. I will hold as there's a deputant. SC 2620, application for fence exemption, 21 Carrera Boulevard, Ward 21. I will hold as there are deputants. SC 26.21. Apologies, let me change my page. Request for fence exemption, 26 Bowater, Ward 22. I will hold as there are deputants. That brings us back to the item of new business that Councillor Thompson had introduced and has been displayed. Are we prepared to vote on that? Anyone like to hold it? Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. Okay, thank you, everybody. That brings us back to our first item of business, which was SC 26.1, final report, 66 and 80 Dale Avenue, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application. Ward 24, there are 10 deputants. The first deputant is Christian Huggart, who is the Vice President, Development of Podium Developments. Christian, are you online?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You have 5 minutes.
Great. I wonder if I could push my deputation to the end and let the other folks speak first, just so I may be able to try to answer some questions for council.
Okay, I see the committee is nodding in agreement, so we'll move to the next deputant, Sandra Gomez. Do we have Sandra on the line?
To the chair, that speaker is not connected.
Okay, that brings us to our next deputant, Peter Gomez.
To the chair, it does not appear that that speaker is connected.
That brings us to Peter Thachuk.
To the chair, that speaker is connected. They've been provided with the audio panels. Peter, it looks like they've just connected their mic. I'm now unmuting the speaker's mic.
Good morning. Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you. You have
You
5
can hear me?
minutes. We can hear you. You have 5 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you on this issue. My name is Peter Thatchuk. I am a member of the Cliffcrest Scarborough Village West Residents Association. I have provided a submission. Do all of you have a copy of it? I would prefer not to read it to you and not use up the 5 minutes.
It is displayed. We have a copy of it.
Perfect. Okay, so if you have read it or you read through it, you'll find that I have a number of issues with this particular project. One of them is the fact that the ingress and egress to this site is still going to be into the local community. That is problematic. The other is, I believe we're actually putting the cart before the horse here. There is a lack of infrastructure in this neighborhood. We're in the second lowest quintile of park space, and what we're doing here is giving up part of the green space, part of the linear green space, abutting the railway for a development. And I think it would probably be more helpful if we, in fact, tried to resolve some of the traffic issues that are going to arise from here. I'm going to allow my submission to speak for itself with the issues, and I'm going to use the rest of the 5 minutes if anyone there has any particular questions for me based on my submission or anything I've said. It doesn't appear that any of you have any questions for me, so I'm going to close.
Sorry about that, Peter. I was having difficulty unmuting. Is there any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Peter. We'll move to Vijay Shastri.
To the chair, it does not appear that that speaker is connected.
Okay, that brings us to Jeffrey Prince.
That speaker is connected. I am now unmuting their mic.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for having me. And I am not as familiar with council's procedures, but I'll try to at least adjust myself. So my name is Jeffrey Prince, and I live at 507 90 Dale Avenue, Scarborough, next to the proposed new housing development. I'm also a board member of the same residence, MTCC 978. It has been 30 years this year that this community has lived and occupied a patch of greenery peacefully and without much disruption. Today, members of this community are in agonizing fear. And therefore, in trying to be brief, the owners of 90 Dale wish to state categorically that they are distressed and concerned that such an expansive housing project should not be allowed to be squeezed in this tight land space, which is large between the back of 90 Dale and the CN rail. The CN rail lines, on the basis of, I made a submission, I had 5 points or 5 grounds. One, the environmental impact. Since our resident is on the edge of the Greater Toronto Area Greenbelt, trees that have been sheltering this area for 30 years must be removed in order to make way for these new high-rise buildings. If anyone is familiar with this tract or this patch of greenery, you would probably appreciate the impact on wildlife habitat. That would include foxes, deers, rabbits, many species of rodents. There's a bird sanctuary, and disrupting that is going to really disrupt the eco balance, both for society and for nature. The second point I want to raise, and I know I have only 5 minutes, but the second point I'd like to raise is the overcrowding and housing density. There's concern about the increased housing density of the and this is of critical concern. This will lead to extra traffic congestion, not only on the completion of the project, but during the course of construction. Thirdly, the issue of dust and noise pollution. The issue hits at the heart of people's health. At 90 Dale and within the living vicinity of Dale Avenue, there are many seniors who live with varying health challenges. This extreme dust pollution is going to add to their misery, and I think even the city council would wonder who is going to talk for these seniors who may not be able to talk for themselves. Point number 4, privacy and for the residents of 90 Dale. While we should have no objection to certain types of urban development, shouldn't the city planners be concerned about the quality of life of its own people? The close proximity of these multi-unit buildings would encroach on existing residents' privacy in a manner that would certainly induce all kinds of stress and safety concern. Actually, recently and within the last 3 weeks, 90 Dale has had, or at least it has been a victim of 2 separate incidences of vandalism. The Toronto Police is still in the process of investigation. And my submission has, the 5th point my submission has is based on entry access and road access to Kingston Road. I don't know we have clear strategies to consider where the driveway is going to be and how the access to Kingston Road is going to be, because this is a pocket, it's a corner, and I would really like to have some guidance. We would really like to have some guidance, but we are appealing to the city to reconsider this project that is going to disrupt the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your deputation, Jeffrey. Any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to our next deputant, John So.
To the chair, that speaker is connected. They've been provided with the audio panels. They just need to click on Connect Audio at the bottom of their WebEx panel.
Hi, John. Are you able to connect?
Looks like John has connected. I am now unmuting their mic.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is John Su. I am also a board member at 90 Dale, which sits with where the construction site would be happening. I want to also express my concerns about the building project which is being proposed behind the building. The main concern is really the amount of population that will be definitely increased in our area. As you know, the area itself don't even have proper sidewalks on both sides, and a lot of them are not even continuous. So with the increase in traffic, my concern is about the infrastructure which is there. From a traffic standpoint, and also because of the fact that we only have 2 single lanes, if you are there early in the morning, you can see a lot of people walking their dogs. There are people who actually uses the routes to exercise daily. With the increase in traffic that are being, when that construction site completes and the project completes, you're going to see a lot of people going on, especially from a traffic standpoint, with cars. So that really raises a big concern for me. Also, if you are there in the evenings, you can see a lot of children playing. They're skateboarding even in the middle of the road. So it really become a hazard if there is such a great increase in population. So that raises a big concern to me. As I hear also mentioned about the infrastructure, as you know, this area is relatively old. I'm concerned about the piping underneath. Especially if you want to look at it from a waste perspective, with the amount of housing that is being proposed, I'm not quite sure how it's going to handle it from a sewage perspective. So that's a lot of my concerns. I also want to talk about the green field, which Jeffrey has mentioned also. If you are there in the middle of the night, you're going to see, sometimes to your surprise, deer running. I mean, that's fabulous ecosystem balance that we see there, which is really a luxury for us. If you're going to remove that green field, again, you can disrupt the eco balance that Jeffrey was talking about. So with this, and also the safety concerns which Jeffrey have mentioned, with the vandalism which happened in the last 3 weeks, with the moving in, not quite sure how safe it's going to be that area, because our area at the back, especially, is wild open space, right? So that's a major concern with the new people that are going to be moving in. So that's all I have to comment about. So if there's any remarks or questions, feel free to ask me. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you, John. Are there questions of the deputant? Councillor Thompson, sorry, Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Very much, Madam Chair. Through you to the speaker, John. John, I'm just wondering, did you and or members of your association participate in the working group, which I assume that there was a working group to deal with this particular subject property?
Yes, we did. We attended them, and they were.
Right.
We did attend the working group that was presented maybe last year.
Right. And I'm just wondering, at that time, were you able to ask questions of staff or submit your questions of staff dealing with issues with respect to, as you pointed out, infrastructure and so on? I'm just wondering if you had a response from the technical services and so on your questions.
Yeah, I felt that their answers were in some sense biased. They have told us that they went by and actually monitored the traffic. You have to realize that our area is elderly, or most of the population is senior. So it is not a good way of registering the population in and out, in my mind.
Okay, fair enough. So there are standards and standard sort of procedures that the city and their technical folks go through, which is citywide. Are you then questioning the validity of that, or are you just simply that you're not happy with respect to the response? I'm just curious as to your rationale.
I think both. That the actual analysis was done from a traffic standpoint. I don't think it was correctly done from my perspective.
Okay, fair enough. And just on the final point, you talk a little bit about the green space and so on. The report speaks to resources, and also there's a POPs that's approximately 2,438 square meters, which is privately owned, publicly accessible space that would provide walking trail and other. It's configured in a way that would be an improvement and an asset and a benefit for the community. Is this a benefit to you? Do you think that is something that would really add as part of a feature and attraction to the community?
I mean, I feel that space definitely will. Obviously, it's not being developed now. It's just basically land that has been mowed. Definitely, if it's there, it will add an improvement because there will be an area that people can use, obviously, right?
Right. So the report speaks to the fact that it will be there as part of this application. I'm just wondering if you had taken that into consideration.
I did look at that. There is added benefit from that perspective. Definitely, yes. I have to agree it is. But we need to balance the thing, right? What is the benefit of adding that green space as opposed to the amount of people that will be in that area, right? So,
all right, fair enough.
The two, right?
No, I appreciate that. So thank you very much, John, for your response to my question. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Are there any additional questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to our next deputant, Jim Wood.
To the chair, Jim Wood is connected and they've been provided with the audio panels. Jim, if you could please click on Connect Audio at the bottom of your WebEx panel. To the chair, it doesn't appear that Jim has clicked connect audio. I can attempt to troubleshoot with the speaker while we move to the next.
Okay, thank you, Jim. We'll come back to you. Our next speaker will be Tom Cassandra with Cliffcrest Scarborough Village Residents Association. Tom, are you on the line?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You have 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Tom Cassandra. I have a master's in design and strategic foresight and innovation, and I've been a design professional for over 35 years. More than 2 years ago, I attended the community consultation for this project because I was considering purchasing and moving to 54 Dale Avenue. When I learned there could be hundreds of additional cars at the stop sign right outside this home, I decided to move elsewhere in Scarborough Village to get away from the traffic, congestion, looming condos of the Toronto Beaches living. At that meeting, I put to the developer if they could reduce the traffic through the neighborhood, their proposal could be a lot more plausible. Or palatable, excuse me. What bothers me as a design professional when I see proposals like this is that they are unfinished. The pretty picture is there, but they gave up on solving the problems of traffic and pedestrian crossing. The pedestrian crossing problem is identified in the report for action, but could easily be missed. Recommendation 9, City Council direct transportation services staff to examine the need for a mid-block pedestrian signal. And recommendation 10, direct city planning staff to examine the feasibility of establishing a pedestrian connection to the Guildwood GO station. Why are these recommendations there? Because a problem, an obvious problem that has been identified. The report states the site is only 500 meters from the GO station. If you are a crow, that sounds great in terms of proximity to rapid transit, if you are a crow. If you are a pedestrian who doesn't want to run across 6 lanes of traffic, it is actually 1.85 kilometers. So for many, car driving distance, or for the elderly, a long stroller walk. These reports never show the images of the problem, which is why I illustrated for them in the document I submitted titled 80 Dale Avenue Problems. I encourage you to pull this up and to view at least the first image before making your decision. It has been more than 2 years since this problem was identified. Why do we not know the answers to these required pedestrian studies? Don't you think you should know if there's a safety issue with costs before you decide? I'm not here to ask you to stop this project. I'm here to ask you to say, not yet. Go solve these 2 problems first. That's just smart. The developer should solve these problems. They're the one making the money. It's their project that's creating the problems. No one designs a car and decides to put it into production when they're unsure if it is safe. They don't send the designs to tooling and then set up a committee to study the feasibility of adding safe brakes later. That sounds absurd, doesn't it? A good designer will present 5 equally feasible solutions to a problem for critique. I don't see one. And there isn't a solution. And if there isn't a solution for these problems, then maybe it isn't the right design. This is a site with potential. Many different things could be built here. The developer is asking for the privilege to change the nature of the community and build a project of scale that will generate tens of millions of dollars in profit, perhaps 100 million. Developers would like you to believe they're doing us a much needed favor by increasing Toronto's housing stock. But projects like this are not solving homelessness or affordable housing. That's not a private sector thing. They are locking up land in advance of the changing rules in January that would require greater social responsibility with increased affordable housing requirements, and also creating great foreign investment opportunities. I repeat that it is a privilege to be allowed to build and profit in our community. A pretty building rendering is not enough. If a direct entrance to Kingston Road was a requirement for the project to go ahead so as to minimize traffic impact to the community, I'm sure the developer would grumble and complain, but a creative solution regarding the Kingston Road entrance would materialize, and there would still be plenty of money left over for executive bonuses. In conclusion, I recommend you defer this application until after the pedestrian crossing studies are completed and direct the developer to pay for said studies and the cost of implementing the best solution. Taxpayers should not be on the hook for these costs that are a result of the developer's profit-making venture. I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your deputation. I can confirm that we have access to your written submission as well as Peter's that spoke earlier. Any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to our next deputant, Mark Richardson, and then we'll go back and try and connect with John. So.
Good morning, councillors. It's Mark Richardson from HousingNowTO.com. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Councillors, as we did during the earlier discussions about this site at your committee meeting over 2 years ago in September 2019, our affordable housing volunteers from HousingNowTO.com feel obliged to raise our deep concerns about the extremely weak affordable housing outcomes on this site, most of which was formerly 3.2 acres of city-owned lands next to a high-order transit station at Guildwood Go. This land was sold by Build TO a number of years ago. If the city still owned this land today, it would be a Housing Now site at a much higher density than anything that is before you in today's report. As with many other sites from the city's Open Door program, we see the same recurring problem on the city side of the table, that the number of affordable housing units proposed in the initial Open Doors approvals by City Council gets cut down during the negotiations and approval process with the City Planning Department, the local councillors, and the very active neighborhood homeowners groups that you've heard from this morning. This is a fundamentally flawed practice, and it needs to be called out. City staff need to be instructed that it has to end. Our city has a housing crisis. That crisis is a key topic of the current federal election and will be a prime voter concern during next year's provincial and municipal elections. There is zero chance of Toronto solving our housing crisis if your Scarborough Council is afraid to upset and anger existing homeowners near these redevelopment sites. As your own Housing Now program shows, and Councillor Crawford and Councillor Thompson can speak to the sites in their ward, the trade-off for new affordable and workforce housing on city-owned land requires greater increased height and density to allow the market rate units to help pay for a high percentage of affordable housing units on those sites. The final report before you today about 80 Dale, it fails on almost all of those metrics. In 2018, this building was proposed to be at 27 stories with 386 units, including 116 affordable rental homes via the Open Doors program and provincial subsidies. It also included 53 units of 4-bedroom apartments, the very kind of family-sized units that we often hear Scarborough Council demanding from developers. Today's final report has only 19 stories, 12 stories and 7 stories. So that's a combined 19 stories and a hope that you might be able to retain 47 affordable housing Open Doors units from the original proposal. The choice to proceed with a much smaller building than the 2018 proposal is mostly based on complaints from local homeowners. It has resulted in the loss of dozens of potential affordable housing units on this site, and today 0 of the 53 4-bedroom units from 2018 remain. Now, your city planning staff have justified this loss in today's report by stating, it should be noted that council approval of Open Door support for development does not constitute any form of approval for the development application under review. The financial incentives and funding being provided under the Open Door program are subject to adjustment once the applicable planning permissions are secured. Honestly, at a time when Toronto has literally hundreds of people sleeping in our parks and people finding hard places to pay their rent, perhaps it is time for City Council to reset some of our planning priorities in the city. In order to ensure that we end this practice of placing default policy on entitled neighborhood NIMBY voices above the needs for creating 40,000 new units of affordable housing that you have all agreed we require by 2030. For reference, As part of our materials today, we have included the attachment of the future vision of the Guildwood GO Station parking lot, which comes from another site that is before you today. We'd encourage you to look at today's report for 80 Dale, consider just how much missed opportunity is on this site because of the planning decisions to reduce the very reasonable height that were proposed on this site in 2018. As always, our volunteers are happy to answer questions about real-world data around creating new affordable housing via transit-oriented development of government-owned lands, and we would welcome your questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your deputation, Mark. And my apologies, I said earlier the next deputant was John, but we'd already heard from him. So Jim Wood would be next, just so Jim, you can be ready. Are there any questions for Mark Richardson? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Mark, for your deputation. We'll go back to Jim Wood.
Hi, Jim. Your mic is now unmuted.
Thank you. Am I being heard?
We can hear you, Jim. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'm a resident of Scarborough Village. I have lived in our village for over 20 years. Our village will not continue to be a village. It is being overdeveloped. When is enough enough, I ask? Well, I submit enough already. We need more green space, not less. Traffic on Scarborough Golf Club Road, where I live, is getting worse and will continue to get worse. We have a 3 to 4 year Metrolinx build to tunneling under the railroad. We have the Dale Avenue development. We have other proposed developments at Markham, at Kingston Road. All these developments, many going on at the same time, which will make our village difficult to live in. I also want to speak to the Dale Avenue, this proposal, where the original proposal for affordable units was at 30%. And I'm surprised that council would be okay with reducing it to 16%. I agree with Mark. And all the other comments from Tom and John and Jeffrey and Peter and their submissions. I've read Peter's submission. They have spoken on behalf of many residents that we did not hear from this morning. But we are all raising concerns that our fellow neighbors also have. Again, I ask, when is enough? When is enough? Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your deputation. Deputy Mayor Thompson has a question for you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, through you to the speaker. Sir, I'm a little confused. You say that you asked the question, when is enough enough? You've indicated that you are in agreement with the speakers who have spoken before. You also mentioned Mark Richardson, who is asking for more intensification and so on. Others have asked for less and so on, but you say you agree with all of them. I'm just trying to understand. Can you unpack that agreement that you commented on for me, please? Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I agree with the concerns on traffic. I agree with the concerns about green space. I do recognize that there's a housing shortage in Toronto. Having more housing available is agreeable, but the extent, like 800 plus units on Dale. I'm told there's 700 units being proposed at Markham Road. I'm told there's a submission for I don't know how many units at Scarborough Road and Kingston. So that's too concentrated. That's too much in our village. We've done our part. We continue to do our part, but there is a line being crossed. We're no longer we will no longer have a feel of a village. We will be a high density area. That's what I have concerns about.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you to the deputants. Are there any additional questions of the speaker? Okay, that brings us to Christian Huggett.
To the chair, that speaker's mic is unmuted.
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Again, I'm Christian Huggett. I'm the VP of Podium Development, and we are the developer representing the owner on this site. Thank you to all that submitted comments and those thoughtful comments and questions that I've heard. And it's clear to me that there is competing interests from local residents as well as folks who are looking at greater issues that face our city. And I think that's an exact mirror to what we've been challenged with on this site ourselves. And that explains the various iterations we've gone through, explains the significant work and revisions we've gone through. And I'll just point out that this process for us started over 4 years ago. We didn't just parachute in and put something in. We've been working at this for a long time with several of the councillors here as the wards changed, and with planning staff, with working groups, with many stakeholders. Several I recognize from the chats and comments today. I can say that we are quite proud and happy with the result. We think that the proposal is been shaped by all the inputs from all of those various stakeholders, and we are very optimistic about the potential this site has in the concept and our execution of such. We have spent a lot of time making sure this proposal is designed to be environmentally sustainable, which includes a significant number of green roofs, almost 20,000 square feet of green roofs. We are targeting a Tier 2 standard from the Toronto Green Standards. We're looking at low carbon and geothermal. So a number of very environmentally sustainable features. We believe this site is transit supportive, and there were some comments about pedestrian connectivity. We have looked at that very closely. We did a study ourselves for potential walkway connection and submitted that to the city along Kingston Road. We have designed our site so that it is permeable and accessible for the community, including a pop space, and we have agreed to an extension of the sidewalk on Dale Avenue to allow for people to walk safely on the east side down to Kingston Road, which doesn't exist. It stops at 90 Dale driveway. We are including a number of direct and indirect community benefits, which are including the POPs I mentioned, the sidewalk. We are proposing and have agreed to a cash contribution to upgrade the park at the councillor's discretion, which is adjacent to our site. So that will be an immediate place where monies can be spent to improve the neighborhood at large, as well as formalize that space. There has been several comments around giving up linear green space. An idea about this as a park. This site has been zoned and designated not as a park for some time. We bought it from Bill Toronto. It's highway commercial, but has some challenges about being highway commercial. because of the access to Kingston and the bridge. So we understand, that the community sees it as green space, but there is a portion of that will be retained as park, and that we have spent a great deal of effort putting in a heavily landscaped area that will be open to the public. And ultimately, we think this proposal responds to city policy around intensification that's done sensitively, around transition to neighborhoods, around ensuring infrastructure is there and suitable. All of our work has been heavily reviewed in the 4 years and multiple submissions. We've had a number of peer reviews done as well, so there's been an even greater amount of scrutiny. We are including a land swap to regularize that park, so that there was a comment about that. Really, the park would be an odd shape in its current configuration, and we have included land swap to help with that. And finally, I think we agree with the staff report and the proposed Section 37 contributions, and look forward to answering any questions specifically from any councillors. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant? Councillor Ainsley.
Yeah. Christian, sorry, it's Councillor Ainsley. I want to appreciate your time this morning and the work that you've been doing on this. There's been a lot of consultation on this project with the working group that we formed. You participated in all the meetings. Could you comment a bit about the number of affordable housing units that have gone down in this project?
Sure. As mentioned by Mark earlier, we had submitted an original application in May 2018 for 386 units, including 116 affordable units, and were approved at Open Door for that. Subsequently, through the process and the shaping of the building, we have now gone to a number which is put in the staff report, which is essentially we are trying to do 47 units, or we've committed to 47. And what I mean by committed is that we're not suggesting it through the zoning bylaw, but that through a zoning approval, we can then apply to CMHC. Essentially is a cart before the horse item here, where we cannot, without the CMHC funding agreement, we cannot achieve that number of units by ourselves. So we're applying for a CMHC application after zoning approval. But the good news with that is that there is a density bonus obligation for us back to Build Toronto when we bought the site. And so if we are unsuccessful at CMHC, which is still our intent to go to CMHC and try to get as many affordable housing units as we can, we are obligated to pay Build Toronto a monetary amount in the millions to allow them to secure affordable housing on other sites. So we are trying to be very transparent about what we're trying to do, which is go to CMHC. We need zoning to do that. We've committed to 47 units with Build Toronto to do that. And if we are unsuccessful at CMHC, because that program is very, is quite competitive, then we have a obligation otherwise to Build Toronto, which is obviously developing many affordable units across the city. Does that answer your question?
Yep. Thank you, Christian. Those are my questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ainsley. Are there additional questions? Okay, speakers on this item.
Are we doing questions of staff, Madam Speaker?
Yeah. Oh, my apologies. Yes, questions of staff come first. Questions of staff. Councillor Ainsley, I assume you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
To the staff, planning staff, one of the, I guess, chief concerns that I raised and residents raised at the beginning of this process, and it's been raised through the working group, is you know, this property is mainly or chiefly fronts onto Kingston Road, but it's entering and exiting off of Dale Avenue. And I know there was a lot of discussion along a Kingston Road access point, but that's never been seen as practical, correct?
Through the chair, it's Victor Gottwald. Through the chair, it's Victor Gottwald here. Councillor Ainsley, yes, so we did explore that with our transportation staff, and Lucas, jump in if I don't answer all the questions here correctly, but there were a variety of reasons why access to Kingston Road was not feasible. As you're aware, Councillor, you know, there is a grade change there because it is an overpass over top of the railway there, and the site itself sits below the overpass, and so really a driveway needs to come up to Kingston and then come out onto Kingston where there is a grade change going down towards the southeast. And so what the applicant did provide was a little study, which transportation services staff did agree in the end, which is by putting an access on Kingston, there would be concern about emergency vehicle access and response time. There would be limited movements in terms of in and out of the site, in that it would only be right in and right out onto from Kingston. There are infrastructure issues as well, because the city has a large pipe that runs along the embankment along Kingston Road, which they had very serious concerns about putting a driveway over top of that. So in the end, there were a number of safety considerations that prevented us from putting an access onto Kingston Road.
Okay, and part of the report, or one of the suggestions from the working group, is we're also going to be looking at a signalized intersection at Dale and Kingston Road, correct?
Correct. And so through the study that was provided by the applicant, their consultants deemed that was not necessary. But as was noted by one of the speakers, we do have a recommendation in our report that suggests further study be undertaken to consider some kind of mid-block pedestrian connection. I don't think it will be a light, but it will be some kind of mid-block pedestrian connection that will be provided to provide a convenient access and a safe access across Kingston Road. But that's something that is in the report at this point as further study.
And can you comment on, there was also a lot of discussion about how to access the Gilwood GO train station from the north side of Kingston Road, and there's discussion around a pedestrian connection through the underpass. Has GO Transit been reached out to or been connected with?
So through Madam Chair, again, to answer your question. So as you're aware, there's an informal path that currently kind of traverses the site to the north and under the underpass, and then is connected to Gilwood GO. So we did look at some preliminary designs for how that could happen. In the end, at this point, the Section 37 contributions in consultation with yourself have been directed to the park in terms of above-grade connections. But again, in this report, we have recommended further study be undertaken to consider how that connection can be made. Some preliminary conversations were held with Metrolinx, as well as our transportation services staff. So those conversations can continue through the approval of this recommendation.
Okay. And Victor, there were some comments made by deputants about the amount of intensification in the neighborhood. There's this one, the project at Kingston Road and Scarborough Golf Club, the one at Dale and Markham Road. And I know we have an official plan and there's avenue studies. You know, do those projects comply with what the city is trying to do? The one deputant, I believe, said, you know, we've crossed a line and, you know, these projects are inappropriate for what the city is trying to do. Can you comment on that?
Through the chair again. So Councillor, our recommendation in this report is to support this development because we think it is an appropriate balance of intensification while respecting the needs and desires of the community as well. And as you noted, there is the Guildford GO station, which is less than 500 meters from this site. So for sure, provincial policy directs us to consider intensification in and around transit stations, which is what we've done here. But again, while trying to respect the concerns of the community and providing an appropriate transition kind of to the west, to the park and to the neighborhood itself, to the west of the site.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Madam Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Ainsley. Are there any additional questions of staff? Okay, seeing none, speakers on this item. Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, Madam Chair. I do have an motion to amend the recommendations that I would like to move. It's a technical amendment. Saying that, that can go on the screen maybe now. So it's a technical amendment that's been provided by staff. So I would like to move that. I also would like to move the report and move this amendment, the report as it's going to be amended. When I was first elected in 2018 to represent this area, and this process was well underway, this property been sold. As I was door knocking during the 2018 election, I heard a lot of concerns from people that there was, a large apartment building going in, the impact that it was going to have on Dale Avenue. I did approach staff. I really couldn't understand why a large building such as this wasn't having Kingston Road as the access point. That was probably the top of the list for a lot of people. When this preliminary report for this application was done, we did create a working group that the developer was involved in. We tried to address a lot of the concerns that residents had around green space, access to the Guildwood GO train station, sidewalks, as one of the deputants raised, what could be done around affordable housing. Residents raised the concern about there's no playground on this northeast corner of Kingston Road and Scarborough Golf Club Road. So I'm using Section 37 money as well as other monies from the developer to make sure that the adjacent property can be used as a park. I'm going to be working with the city's Parks and Recreation Department to have a playground put in. The green space at the back, the developer within his plan is putting in a walkway and formalizing it. I think the green space will be a lot more usable and presentable for residents in the area. I'm going to be working with transportation staff around some type of access point at Dale and Kingston Road, both for pedestrians and vehicle traffic, to try and reduce the traffic on Dale Avenue. But overall, I'm happy with this project. I think as we have people that continually come to the city and we have to find places for them to live. And I think that this project goes a long way to fulfilling the needs of what we're trying to do, to find places for people to live, to build walkable, workable communities. And I'm supportive of this project. And I hope everybody can support my amendment and the recommendations before us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ainsley. Deputy Mayor to speak.
I wish to speak, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask a question of Councillor Ainsley.
With apologies. Okay. Questions on the motion for Councillor
Thank
Ainsley?
you. Thank you. Councillor Ainsley, I'm just wondering if you would just clarify for us is the nature of the technical amendment and that you're moving on behalf of staff. And it's quick. I haven't actually been able to sort of balance both with respect to what's there in the recommendations and what you're changing. I just wonder if you just clarify that for us, please.
Sure, if I can get it back
Thanks.
on the screen.
Sure, thank you.
Sorry, I think the meat of it is kind of in the second part.
Okay,
So
you just explain it maybe.
Yeah, if I could get it. Yeah, so in the local park adjacent, so what happened, Deputy Mayor Thompson? So there was a land swap that took place to basically, for lack of a better word, square up the park. So it was a usable piece of property. Square up so it squared up the park, squared up the development area. If you look at the park area, there's a bit of a slope to it. It's not the smoothest area as well. So there is a cash contribution of $800,000 by the developer that's going to go towards the park improvement.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. I just wanted to understand that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillor Inslee.
Yep.
Thank
you,
you,
Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Any additional
Madam Chair,
questions of the mover? Okay, anybody speak to the item? Okay, Deputy Mayor
Madam
Thompson.
Chair, may I just? Thank you, Madam Chair. As Councillor Inslee pointed out, that this matter has been around for quite some time. I think that I want to say, and if my memory serves me correctly, that Councillor Crawford was involved with this initially before the changes with respect to the boundaries and so on. And I know that he had been working very hard and diligently at this and so on. I certainly want to congratulate him, but I also want to congratulate Councillor Inslee. I mean, this is, really tough work, and it's balancing all the interests and so on, as we've heard from the deputants, and not everybody's happy. But I thought Mr. Gottwal added and provided some really insightful information about the process, right, in terms of the continuation and the work that's to be done, in as much as some of the issues have been raised by some of the residents, that they are going to seek to address them, and the clarification with respect to why there isn't the sort of entrance and onto Kingston Road, and I thought that was very helpful. So I just wanted to congratulate Councillor Inslee and certainly the working group for terrific work. This is a very difficult situation always. And the final thing I wanted to say, Madam Chair, that in as much as the City of Toronto has certainly the Housing Now and the opportunities that we're trying to put in place to help residents, I think it's really important to understand that certainly residents do have a point and should be certain that their interests are considered. And I think that Councillor Inslee has been able to sort of balance the interests there, and I think that he ought to be commended for that. And for those who simply say that, just because the city has policies, and we respect those policies, but the notion or the thought that somehow, the concerns that residents have about height and density in an area that shouldn't be considered, or it becomes NIMBYism and so on, I don't support that. I do think that it's really important for residents to have input, and in this case they do. And yeah, we never have applications where everybody is happy with everything, and I think the right balance has been struck here, vis-a-vis having been on Build Toronto when we sold this site. This particular site has come a long way to reflect the interests of the residents. And again, I just congratulate the local councillor for the work that he has done along with the group. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Any additional speakers on this item? Okay, I too just briefly would like to, just recognize the amount of hard work that Councillor Inslee has put into this, and really trying to strike a balance of all the interests in a way where we can proceed. So thank you for that, and also recognize, Councillor Crawford's work before that as well. Should there be any additional speakers? Seeing none, Councillor Crawford.
I wasn't going to speak, but I thought I'd just, first of all, thank the community, along with Councillor Ainsley and the work that they have been doing over the last number of years. Was something that was part of my ward, and we had started that process a long time ago. But on the lines of what the Deputy Mayor is saying, is trying to figure out where the balance is. We do indeed, especially on Kingston Road, being a major thoroughfare of the city, we're mandated by the province, through the Planning Act and the official plan, to look at density, to be putting more people on that avenue along with other avenues. And it's a challenge with communities. I am facing a number of applications along Kingston Road all throughout my ward. It's a balance that we try to achieve with the communities in trying to, recognize the desire and the need for more development, more intensification and density, but trying to recognize the challenges that communities have. And that balance sometimes is very difficult to achieve. But I think what's really important is to work with those communities, with our planning staff, with the individual development applications, to figure out where that balance is. And as the Deputy Mayor said, we won't be able to please everybody, but I think trying to find that balance is important. And we always try to reach that balance and try to get reports coming to Community Council that we can, safely say and be able to congratulate each other that we've found the balance. The other alternative, which is, and I've talked to my community members, we don't want to do is refusing an application such as this. And then the next step or the next process of that, which is an appeal process, where the community doesn't necessarily have the same kind of input, nor does city planning. It's a different process in the appeal process. And I don't think that is a step or a direction that any of us want to go. Because we want to find out where the balance is. So that's why when you look at these reports coming to Community Council and of course Council, we try to find where that balance is and ensuring that, we've met most of the needs of the community. So again, I want to just congratulate Councillor Ainsley for the work that he's done with the community on something that I think will ultimately benefit, the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Any additional speakers on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote first on the amendment. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. We'll vote next on the item as amended. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. Thank you to all the deputy and staff involved in that item. That brings us to SC 26.2. Final report 7437, 7439, 7441 Kingston Road zoning amendment. We have three deputants. The first deputant is David Nelligan with Aird and Bearless LLP. David, do we have you on the line?
To the chair, the speaker is connected and they are currently unmuted. David, you should be able to speak.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good morning. I'm David Nelligan. I'm a solicitor on behalf of the applicant this morning, Crown Scarborough Developments, Inc. I'm also joined by the second deputant, Mike Dror from Bousfields, who's the lead planning consultant on this application. And he's here to answer any questions that you or members of the Community Council may have that I may not be able to answer. I want to start this morning by acknowledging the efforts of city staff and Councillor McKelvey and your office in working collaboratively and cooperatively with my client on this application, which dates back to the summer of 2018. The application that's before you today is markedly different from what was originally proposed, and that's the result of an iterative process of public meetings, comments, submissions, and resubmissions that sought to address the concerns of staff and the local community with the proposed redevelopment of this site. Through that iterative process, the proposal has gained a park, it's gained a traffic light, about 60 new trees, and a functional design that's sensitive to its surroundings and meets or exceeds most city guidelines. It's notable too that in an environment where these kinds of improvements are often horse traded or fought over through closed door litigation and mediation at the Ontario Land Tribunal, we're very pleased that we're able to appear before you today with a positive recommendations report from staff and the hope that such an expensive and adversarial process can be avoided. As Deputy Mayor Thompson said just a few minutes ago, with any development of this size, there will be some who remain unhappy or unconvinced. We have read the written submissions of some of the neighbors who remain concerned about the development, and we do appreciate those concerns. But we are confident that the issues that our neighbors have raised have all been addressed through this application. For example, we understand the concerns about traffic, as with most large developments. We have had 2 consulting firms provide traffic impact studies in support of this proposal, both vetted and reviewed by staff, and both concluded that the surrounding area road network can reasonably accommodate the development. The proposal will introduce a traffic signal to control movements onto Kingston Road, which does not exist today. And the proposal includes nearly 500 parking spaces on site, which is more than what is required, alleviating any risk of infiltration or parking in the surrounding neighborhoods to the north. We also understand there are remaining concerns about height. The proposal is 11 stories in height, but the buildings terrace upwards such that the tallest portions of the building are at the southern portion of the development, providing significant separation distance from the residential developments to the north. The height of the buildings is less than the width of the right-of-way, and the buildings both meet the 45-degree angular planes included in the mid-rise guidelines. We've also read some of the concerns about the geotechnical suitability of the lands for development, and we can advise that a geotechnical and hydrological review was submitted and reviewed and resubmitted and re-reviewed as part of the application, and no concerns have been identified with this proposal. While the concerns of the neighbors are recognized and appreciated, I want to spend my few remaining seconds highlighting the benefits of this proposal for you this morning. This proposal is providing a nearly 2,000 square meter community park on site that will increase the supply of parkland in the area, support the proposed density, provide useful and attractive green space along Kingston Road, and contribute to the building of a complete community. This proposal is providing $1.4 million in community benefits secured through a Section 37 agreement, with those funds being directed to the Northeast Scarborough Community Centre, the refurbishment of the Royal Rouge Tot Lot, and to other park improvements within Ward 25. And the proposal is also providing 422 residential units, adding intensification to a much needed area of the city, an underutilized area of the city. And those units exceed the city's growing up guidelines for both unit size and number of bedrooms, addressing both provincial policies for providing a full range of housing opportunities and addressing the city's desperate need for new housing. So we emphatically agree with staff's recommendations, their conclusions, that this proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement, it conforms to the growth plan, and it satisfies the policy objections of the city's official plan. We hope that you will see fit to adopt those recommendations and recommend your approval to Council. Thank you for your time this morning. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there questions of the deputant? Okay, I have a few questions. Is it your intent to build both the buildings together, and what assurances can we have around that?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for that question. Yes, the building presents as 2 buildings or 2 11-story towers, but they are connected by underground parking. And they are technically 2 buildings for the purpose of the Ontario Building Code, but they are being brought forward as a single building, and there's no phasing plan suggesting that they will be built at different times. This will be a single construction of the entire facility at the same time.
Okay, and in terms of just construction impacts, are you looking at any road closures in the area? How will you deal with all of that? Do you have a construction plan still to submit as part of your site plan? So what is the future hold for a submission of a construction plan?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The application before you is a zoning bylaw amendment application. There is a site plan amendment or a site plan application forthcoming, which will address issues of construction. We have had preliminary discussions with staff about this and through our consultants. There will, in order to facilitate the road improvements and the signalization, there will be some traffic impacts for certain, but those will be addressed through the site plan stage.
Okay, and with the construction of the intersection as well. Okay, great. Any additional questions of the deputant? Okay, our next deputant is Mike Dror.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you very much. So I'll be very brief. I'll just reiterate what my colleague, Mr. Nelligan, mentioned, which is that we're very excited to be here. It's been a long process. It began for us, Bouthwoods, back in even 2017. So it's been over 4 years in the making, us being here today. The project has really evolved over time, and that's been due to the great feedback we received from city staff, from the community, from yourself, Madam Chair, and just from the kind of iterative process we've gone through. We've fully agree with the recommendations in a very thorough report prepared by city staff. And if I can just take a moment to thank specifically Samuel Barron, our planner, who has been a pleasure to work with, as well as our previous planner, Sophie Knowles, and the manager, Christian Contresca, as well as yourself, Madam Chair, and your staff, and the many residents who we spoke to at the 2 community meetings which we've had on this application. I won't take up any more time, but I will close by adding our support for the recommendations, and I'm happy to answer any further questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to Trevor D'Souza. Trevor, are you online? You have 5 minutes.
Yes, good morning. I am online, and I hope you all can hear me.
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I was only aware of this public meeting just a few days ago, and I was so upset that that everything went on, and there was a meeting earlier that I was not aware of. So I turned out a letter and added to it a few more items. I'm sure, Jennifer, did you receive my letter? I didn't get a chance to talk to you.
I received the letter you dropped off at the office. It's also been distributed to all the councillors here as well as part of your submission.
Okay, so I'm glad that that's happened. Thank you very much for that. Okay, now I just want to know if any of the developers are at the meeting right now. I'm on a phone and I can't view anybody out there. It's a bit of a shame because most of the people are not really computer savvy, that they are able to handle this on a phone or on the computer. But we would have been, it would have been far more appreciative if we had got there. But COVID days, things have changed for us. So the developers are really getting a free ride on this on the computer because the masses are not there to attend to this meeting. But however, I'm going to repeat my speech because obviously the lawyer of this developers. Are there any developers out there who are representing the developers at least?
The applicant spoke previously, but and they are here. But just the way deputations are set up, it's your opportunity to speak to the councillors, not to ask questions. So you have 3 minutes, 15 seconds remaining to state your opinions.
I'm just going to give you a brief thing. My family and I moved to a 2-story home in '86 on the ravine side. The homes in the area were built on sand, a very high concentration of loose sand. There were boreholes drilled by a company approved by TerraPro. Even though TerraPro were hired by the then Toronto Region and Conservation Authorities, their reporting of eroding lands was slanted and dimmed in favor of the city of Scarborough and the Toronto Conservation Authorities' interests so that the developers could build homes near the top of a eroding slope. It was the city's interest to acquire more homes built in order to generate more taxes. The city and conservation authorities ignored the reports and went ahead with building homes on eroding land. Okay, any disturbance to land, especially on sandy soil, whether in having swimming pools or digging out soil for multi-story buildings, is detrimental to the surrounding area as much as 500 feet away or more. Does anyone recall what happened to the Scarborough Bluffs? Over 45 years, many homes were built more than 200 feet away from the top of the bank. Swimming pools were also built in residents' background, making the surrounding soil even more unstable. 40 years later, some of these same pools and homes are teetering on the brink of collapse. Millions of dollars are spent on shoring up some of the homes on the bluffs, and these are single or 2-story homes. Can one imagine the effect of having 11 stories on surrounding homes, parking lots, etc.? Vibrations alone during construction of these units to the surrounding neighbors will enhance unstable land. The effect is greater than just a multiplication factor. developers who built homes in the mid-80s built on eroding land. And then they disappeared and left the frustration to the homeowners to do the fighting with the city and conservation authorities. Do not trust the city and conservation authority. They tried to wear one down, hoping that the owners would sell and disappear, and many did. If the developers are really focused on the public park that they highlighted, allow them as a measure of goodwill to offer the full area as a park for the residents in the neighborhood. The park size, as noted in the document, appeared to be fake. The area of Scarborough East sits on a water table. These waters keep shifting under the land's 15 to 20 feet below the surface over a clay sandy interface. This shifting of water movement or changing course will follow the path of least resistance. For years, the water movement follows a certain path, and if there are digging or collapse or plant or tree roots moved or for underground parking, that causes the land to be unstable in the surrounding area. All neighborhood units in the area will be seriously affected. Prior to 1989, there was a bird sanctuary in the Canadian Tire Plaza that now stands. It included small ponds and birds from miles over North America that sought refuge and a resting area. These ponds were filled by the underground flowing water and rain. All that was destroyed and covered by the then greedy city of Scarborough and conservation authorities. By covering the pond, flowing water sought over other parts, and some of the flowing water found release under our homes and exited out to the Rouge River. This water flow played some part of my table land erosion, which accelerated when my neighbor built a swimming pool approved by the Metro Conservation Authority.
Trevor, I ask you for a final thought as you're over time.
Okay, can you give me another 2 minutes?
I can give you 15 seconds.
Thank you. I lost good tableland about the size of nearly a double-car garage before the authorities decided to show up the land. A couple of decades ago, there was a proposal for a hotel to build a five-star hotel at the far end of Royal Rouge Trail. Apart from objections from the residences in the area, it soon discovered that the area was unstable for multi-story buildings.
Okay, thank you for your deputation, Trevor, and we have your written submission as well. Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay,
I've said it all in my paper.
Great, thank you, Trevor. That leaves us with, moves on now to, questions of staff. Are there questions of staff? Okay, I have some questions of staff. Great, I see Samuel's here and Paul. Okay, my first question is, we did just hear the residents speak to geotechnical considerations. Is that part of this application? And or also is that addressed through site plan?
Good morning. My name is Samuel Barron, and I'm a planner in community planning. And through you, Madam Chair, a geotechnical study, geotechnical investigation study, and hydrogeological report, and a number of other studies were submitted in support of this application.
And after your review of that, are there any concerns that would prohibit this from proceeding?
As far as I understand, staff have found no issues with the submitted studies.
Okay. My next question is with respect to the scale of the development, what potential impacts were identified and how were those mitigated?
Through you, Madam Chair, this application was reviewed against the official plan policies and applicable urban design guidelines, and city staff have worked closely with the applicant to reduce any potential impacts. So this includes a reduction in the overall number of units as it went through 4 stages of rezoning submission. As well, the application also deploys a number of urban design performance standards, including setbacks and stepbacks to minimize the potential for impacts. And some of the impacts that staff looked at through the evaluation of this application include the potential shadow impacts that would be falling to the north of the application, and as well potential view impacts from the Rouge Park. So as documented in the staff report, the application and the proposal does successfully mitigate any shadows that fall to the north of the site. And through the shadow study that was submitted, staff did determine that the shadowing was deemed appropriate. And with respect to the potential views from the Rouge Park, staff visited the Rouge Park and looked at whether the proposal would be seen from the Rouge. And as documented in the report, staff can confirm that the terrain and vegetation shield the development from view from the trail specifically and campground at the base of the hill near the Rouge River.
Okay, thank you. Can you speak to traffic and parking? So is there enough parking at this development, and how is traffic and potential for infiltration into the local community mitigated?
Through you, Madam Chair. I'll just speak briefly to the question around infiltration first. So as we've commented in the staff report, through movements to and from Raspberry Road, and the development will be restricted. As the report documents, there will be a new traffic signal and intersection implemented that aligns with Raspberry Road. And through movements would be prohibited at this intersection. And staff will work through the detailed design of the intersection to be secured and constructed through site plan control. And when Scarborough Community Council approves the signal as part of the future implementation, it would ensure that these restrictions are put in place. And with respect to the sufficiency of parking on site, in total, the applicant proposes 410 residential parking spaces and 84 visitor spaces for a total of 494 parking spaces to service the 422 residential dwelling units. So that's essentially a rate of 1.2 spaces per dwelling unit. City planning and transportation staff have recommended that the parking regulations detailed in the citywide bylaw for parking be adopted. And we found that the residential parking supply as proposed meets and exceeds the requirements of the citywide bylaw. So yes, there's sufficient parking supply on site to service the units.
Okay, thank you. And then lastly, can you speak to the community benefits that have been secured through this recommendation?
Through you, Madam Chair, as part of the rezoning process and the recommendation as documented in the report, City Planning have worked closely with the Councillor's Office and with the applicant and have secured a number of community benefits through Section 37 of the Planning Act in exchange for the increase in height and density above the existing zoning bylaw. So planning staff recommend that Council require the owner enter into a Section 37 agreement securing a contribution of $1.4 million in community benefits to be directed towards local park improvements and recreation capital facilities in Ward 25. And so just to quickly break down how that would be allocated, $900,000 of that $1.4 million would be allocated towards the Northeast Scarborough Community Center. $250,000 would be allocated towards the Royal Rouge Tot Lot, and then $250,000 would be allocated towards general park improvements in Ward 25. And as well, it's been mentioned earlier, through the planning process, planning staff did secure a 1,890 square meter on-site public park located at the western edge of the site that would be conveyed to the city at a later date. So this has been secured and it would be secured through the legal convenience in the Section 37 agreement. And that park itself is in a programmable shape. Parks and Forestry Recreation staff are satisfied with the location of it. And city staff are also recommending that an above base park development might be applied to it. So it would go above and beyond the minimum requirements for parkland dedication on site.
Okay, thank you. Are there additional questions of staff? Okay, seeing none, speakers on this item? Councillor Ainsley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm speaking in support of this application as somebody that, this piece of property has been vacant for a long time. For a bit of context, it's in between a McDonald's and a gas station on the south side of Kingston Road. overlooking the 401, overlooking part of the Rouge Valley. And I think it's a very appropriate use for this land. And I want to congratulate Councillor McKelvey for all of her hard work and dedication, working with local residents, working with staff, the developer. As I said, I think it's an appropriate use for this piece of property. I think the scale and density of the development, the applicant, once again, very appropriate. I think that Councillor McKelvey's worked very hard and diligently to make sure that the monies in terms of Section 37 are being very used appropriately in support of her community. And as somebody that, a nature lover and on the board of the Toronto Region and Conservation Authority, when I first looked at this, I thought it was important to safeguard the Rouge Valley and all the work that we've done as a conservation authority and as a city to make it welcoming for guests and visitors. That's been fulfilled in this application, and I'm fully supportive of it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ainsley. Additional speakers, and I also have a motion to move on this. Okay, seeing none, I have a motion. This is just added assurance. The developer has said that they will be constructing both buildings together, but this requires that they submit the construction management plan that demonstrates that and how that will be happening. In addition, it also has financial security associated with that intersection, which will be very important to ensure that no through movements are allowed from the development into Raspberry Road, as well as, from Raspberry Road over into the development. So this very much mitigates impacts onto the local community in terms of traffic. And then the second item is just that the General Manager of Transportation Services reports back to Scarborough Community Council on how this intersection can be designed in a way that makes sure that it prohibits those movements. I just, firstly, thank you to Councillor Ainsley. I know that he actually did go and walk that site last evening as well. So he did follow that rule of have a look at it and put your boots on the ground. So I thank him for that and his commitment to having a solid look at this application as our neighboring councillor. Councillor Crawford really said it well earlier about the risk of, refusing applications that are consistent with the provincial official plan, refusing applications that we have recommendations from staff. Saying we don't like something is not a solid case that we can bring forward to the Ontario Land Tribunal. We need to have solid legal or planning principles to refuse an application. And in this case, we don't have any of those solid grounds that I have been able to find. The applicant has made setbacks to ensure that they decrease shadow impacts. City staff have done modeling to look at visibility impacts from the Rouge. There has been a lot of due diligence that has been done on the part of city planning to look solidly at this application. And on that basis, I am willing to vote in favor of the staff recommendations at this meeting today. Any additional speakers to this item? Okay. All those in favor of the amendments? All those opposed? The amendment carries. All those in favor of the item as amended? All those opposed? That item carries. Thank you to the deputants for coming today, city staff that participated in that item as well. That brings us to our next item, which is item S. Oh, okay, sorry. That brings us to our next item, which is SC 26.4, Status Update Coronation Drive Employment Area Planning and Transportation Review. I believe we have one speaker on this, Larry Watmore with the Scarborough Community Renewal. Yes.
Madam Chair, there are 2 timed items for 10 o'clock.
Oh, my apologies. That explains why City Clerk were waving at me to get my attention. My apologies. That makes sense now.
No problem.
Okay.
No problem.
My apologies to Mr. Watmore, who I just called. He is going to have to wait a little bit longer. The timed item is SC 26.19. Thank you, Deputy Mayor and the Clerk, for flagging that to me. Application for a fence exemption at 64 Grey Lawn Crescent. We have one debutant on this. Aram Barsamian, or do we have Aram on the line?
Yes, you do.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, so first and foremost, I was hoping I would have some questions with regards to this, but I'm happy to go ahead and tell you that you know, a little bit about the neighborhood. I guess you know, I grew up in this neighborhood, and I've lived here for over 20 years. First with my parents, and then now myself. I actually have a couple of properties in the area. This particular property is where I actually reside. And if you're not familiar with the area, this property is located behind the, I guess, low-rise buildings, or, you know, at one point they were called community housing. I guess, you know, now they're, you know, rebuilt and so on and so forth. But these buildings have a bit of a history, you know, nevertheless. So with that regard, I basically have, you know, put up fence for myself and my family, and you know, it seemed that you know, it's considered to be a little higher than what a regular fence would be. But I mean, I went with this choice because even though it is high, but it's not high for it to be considered, I guess, I don't know, for lack of a better word, illegal, because if a resident does have a pool, they're able to have a 8-foot high fence. But in my case, I have a parking lot of, you know, formerly known a community housing area. So with that being said, when initially we got the property, we would have a lot of, you know, a lot of activity going on in the parking lot. You know, I was told that Michael Thompson visited my house a couple of days back, and you know, there was some discussion going on, and he did mention that, you know, the area is cleaning up and so on and so forth. But the fact of the matter is that my backyard is facing a parking lot. There's a constant movement, a constant, you know, in and out, and you know, music, you know, a little bit of you know, drug use here and there, right? So I do understand when I did buy the house, you know, it was facing a parking lot. So, you know, I did choose to buy this house, yes. However, I think, you know, I should be able to kind of have a fence to kind of protect my backyard from, you know, garbage and debris and, you know, paraphernalia at times. You know, there have been few occasions where, you know, we actually found some syringes and stuff like that in the backyard, but that was before I had a baby. You know, we have a 1-year-old baby now, and you know, I feel much safer, you know, to have you know, a fence that I have to kind of protect my my family. To add a little more about this parking lot, also, there is a garbage bin right behind you know, my backyard. So at times, you know, you would find some you know, garbage bags and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? People try to kind of, I guess, dunk some garbage bags into the garbage bin, but it would fly over into my backyard. So nonetheless, it wasn't a nice scene. So that's one of the other reasons why I decided to go high on my fence. Also, there's some questions about the, you know, the side of why are the side of my fence also high? You know, to be perfectly honest, it's basically pretty much just to have it symmetric. I have amazing neighbors. I'm actually known in the area because I do a lot of work and stuff like that. So I'm very close with my neighbors. Also, one of the other reasons why we're close with all my neighbors is because we're not allowed to park on the street. So we kind of, you know, got together with the neighbors and decided, hey, you know what, like if there's no parking, when you have people over, you can park in our driveways and so on and so forth. So we're a very good kind of a community in that sense. So I have nothing, you know, against my neighbors. If you're to think like why my fences are so high, I did consult with all my neighbors. My neighbors were okay with the fence high, and you know, that's why we went ahead and you know, built the fence. We actually did we do have actually signed consent from the neighbors that they have no issues with that. I think I pretty much have covered everything briefly there. I think if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Questions of the Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the deputant. So, sir, you mentioned that there was government housing that is actually abutting your property. Is that what I heard you say? Madam Chair,
I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson, you got disconnected there on my end here. Can you please repeat that?
No problem. Yes, of course. Thank you. You had mentioned that there was government housing that's actually abutting your property.
Formal government housing. Yes, it was government housing, and there were some stuff that was happening down there that's been on the news and all that stuff. If you were to I'm pretty sure but if you don't, there's a lot of things that were happening there before. I know they're trying to clean it up a little and whatnot. But I mean, in community size, right?
At the moment, you have an 8-foot fence. When the fence was erected, did your contractor visit the city to ask in terms of what was permissible, both with respect to the north and south, as well as the west of your property?
As far as I know, I think that's a no. The fence was built because the current fence was being repaired, and it was, they were unable to repair it, so went ahead with a new fence. Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So that wasn't done. All right. So okay. So you have some garbage bins, at least one garbage bin that's behind your property, and you have indicated that garbage bags have been thrown over onto your property. That's part of the reason why you need a higher fence on the back. Is that what you stated?
One of the reasons, yes. Garbage bins,
fair enough.
Garbage bags,
and also you mentioned that drug paraphernalia,
you name it.
Drug paraphernalia as well has been thrown over into your yard. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. All right. So help me to understand then, with respect to the height, you've indicated that symmetrically you feel that the height of the fence carrying on the north as well as the south side should also be 8 foot. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And why is that?
Simply because, I was explained by the individuals that are building the fence for it to be not to kind of be a parasail, right? Because if you have one side high and the other side low, it could potentially affect the air dynamics of the fence or so on and so forth, and the stability of the fence. So everything when the fence is being built, everything is basically tied together, right?
Yes.
So if you were to have one side higher and the one side lower, it wouldn't be. Yeah.
So you're saying to us that with respect to the fence that there will be a wind tunnel and there is an aerodynamic differential that would be associated if you had the fence to the south and the fence to the north of your neighbors at a lower height, that there would be a problem with respect to stability on the fence. Is that what you just said?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions for this speaker, Madam Chair, but I do have questions of staff, please.
Okay, I'll just confirm nobody else has questions for the speaker. Okay, seeing none, questions of staff, Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you. I wonder if we could just start off with MLS staff first. I'm hoping there's MLS staff that's available. And just to MLS, I wondered if you could maybe confirm whether or not the building, the Masonettes to the west, whether or not that was ever in the history of that location, government housing.
For you, Madam Chair, I couldn't confirm right away. If you give me a moment, I can double check ownership.
It's okay. I can help you with that. It never was.
Okay.
It's okay. I can help you with that. Thank you. I'm just wondering as well, from MLS perspective, have you gone to the site in the Masonette to look to see whether or not there are some issues with respect to garbage and garbage containment and so on, and whether or not you've had any need to visit the site to address those issues?
Again, through you, Madam Chair, Deputy Mayor, I can't, Thompson, I can't state for certain that we
Fair
have
enough.
or have not. Again, it would be a question of having to look at previous history.
Sure, I'd appreciate it if you could provide that information at some point, bringing that forward. I do have questions then for staff regarding the fence. My question, I guess it's MLS as well. The fence height, what is the regulation height that's allowed by the city in terms of on this site? What is the maximum allowable height?
For you, Madam Chair, the max height is 2 meters.
2 meters. So that's around, is that around 6 feet?
That would be 6 feet, 6 inches.
6 inches? Okay, 6 feet, 6 inches, right. The speaker has spoken about the fact that garbage in the back and so on, and let's assume that that's correct, and we want to figure out a way to address that. Will an 8-foot fence eliminate that, or will it provide some degree of protection, do you think?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't know that it would ever eliminate the garbage. It
Right.
would definitely form some part of protection from the garbage blowing over onto the homeowners, the applicant's property. Yes, definitely. And also offer some protection as far as privacy.
On the back, yes.
On the back, yes.
Can you then tell me this idea around ensuring that the entire property is covered by an 8-foot fence on the north as well as the south side? What do you think would be protected that the neighbor the residents at 64 would be protecting from their neighbors to have an 8-foot fence with respect to their neighbors, whether or not the neighbors agree or not? What would be protected? Is there an issue with respect to garbage? Is there an issue with respect to needles coming from the north or south side? Are you aware of any of those concerns?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, I am not aware of any concerns on either of the residential portions to the south or to the north. I would imagine that the reason for it would be more of a privacy issue.
Right, and so let's just unpack that for a moment. The issue of a privacy issue, you're allowed to have 6 feet on either of those sides. What amount of privacy would you be deriving from an additional 2 feet from your neighbors? I mean, since, I don't know, have you had any complaints from either of the neighbors around 64? Have you had any complaint from 64 around the issues around the neighbors affecting their I don't know, garbage or anything associated that would have, I don't know, a negative impact on the neighbor at 64?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not aware of any complaints. I would have to, again, just check our computer system.
Fair enough. And in that area itself, are you aware of any other areas and other addresses where you would have a 6 or an 8-foot separation between neighbors in that entire area at all, apart from, let's say, the back portion that's connecting and abutting to the masonettes to the west? I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on that. Are the sort of regular fences that are in place, are the regular 6-foot fence between neighbors?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not aware of any specific ones, but I would imagine that the majority of them would be in anywhere between 4 feet and the permitted 6 feet, 6 inches.
6 feet. Okay. Thank you very much for responding to my question. Thank you very much. Thank you. Madam Chair, those are all the questions that I have for staff.
Okay. Any additional questions of staff? Okay. Speakers on this item? Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually have a motion, Madam Chair, and I'd like to ask staff to put that motion forward. All right, so I'm going to move the following, Madam Chair, that I'm going to grant the exemption that is being asked for by the property owner. However, I'm not going to grant what is being fully asked for. I'm going to grant the 8-foot height at the west portion of the property, which is adjacent to the masonette. And I'm going to also suggest that the fence to the north and south, so that the fence to the west is 8 feet, we allow that. But the fences to the north and south with both neighbors, those fences be 6 feet, 6 feet 6 inches in height. So not the 8 foot that the speaker and the applicant is desire of. Let me first of all explain that in that neighborhood, which is a wonderful neighborhood, the residents work together and get along quite nicely. I'm very happy for that. And in my observation and inspection during the last few days, and even prior to that, I have not noticed any other 8-foot fence between neighbors. I can grant that the fence on the back of the property, and as the applicant has indicated, things may have been thrown over. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm going to take him at his word for that, because there is a garbage bin that's actually placed right behind his property. And so I think that we can all agree that just on the off chance that things are being thrown over, the bin is a relatively smallish bin, and I went to visit it on Wednesday, actually. And so I'm not really overly concerned about the height on the back, because there are a number of other neighbors that are fences. While they're not necessarily 8 feet, they're much taller than 6 feet, and they've been there for quite some time. The property to the west that the speaker spoke about being government housing has never been government housing. There have been and have continued to be masonettes. They have been owned by a number of different owners. The current owner has spent thousands and thousands of dollars to redevelop and to develop that, to renovate them sufficiently. In fact, the average rent in that area is about $3,000 a month. And yes, there is garbage in the back and so on. And I know that MLS has been dealing with that and so on. So I'm satisfied that to provide an 8-foot fence on the back is appropriate. However, I'm not satisfied that to provide an 8-foot fence between the neighbors to the north and south would be appropriate. And that's why I'm encouraging members of council to not endorse and support any such requirement or that we allow this to happen. We want neighbors who work together and get along together and so on. And this notion of privacy, certainly you can still have privacy with a 6-foot board-on-board fence where there are no gaps in between and so on. And you can have a great time in your own backyard and still find privacy. I don't think that it would be appropriate for us to either encourage or allow 8-foot fence that are symmetrical. And this idea with respect to the notion of a wind tunneling or anything to that effect, I certainly have not heard that one before. That's a new one for me. And certainly it's not something that I would want to support. I know all about wind tunneling and the effects of it and so on. Because as members of council, we have to deal with that all the time with respect to our planning applications. And so when we make decisions to make approvals and so on. So for those reasons, I would suggest that we approve the 8-foot at the west side of the property, but that we reduce and limit the height of the north and south portion of the fence to 6 feet 6 inches. I believe that is sufficient to ensure that the property owner at 64 have their privacy, and at the same time, it's consistent with respect to what is in the community, as the staff from MLS has pointed out, that generally you have 4-foot or a 6-foot 6 inches fence. And that's what I've seen in the area. And so for those reasons, I've asked members of Community Council to endorse my motion that granting the exemption, however, with respect to limitations. So those are my comments, Madam Speaker, with respect to this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Anyone else to speak to this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote on Deputy Mayor's motion. All those in favor?
Just, Madam Chair, sorry.
Yes.
Just on a procedural point of order on this, and again, it's just, my apologies for this, but I just wanted to ask and ensure that staff will inspect to ensure that this particular, once we approve this, that this particular approval will actually be in order, and staff will check to ensure that on both the north side and the south side of the fencing, that it will be 6 foot 6 inches to ensure that it's cut down and reduced in terms of height. I just wanted to confirm that.
So I think it's, we have the will of the committee to allow staff to answer, so go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, Deputy Mayor, I can confirm that once the decision has been granted, the officer assigned to this file will receive a copy of it and will be following up to ensure that the conditions are met.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair, and my apologies to members of me and council for just that interjection, but I just wanted to have a full clarification so there is no misunderstanding by any parties who attending this meeting today. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. We'll vote on.
May I also ask for a recorded vote, please?
Recorded vote on Deputy Mayor's motion.
This is a recorded vote on item SC 26.19. Councillor Thompson?
I'm moving the item and record my vote in the affirmative. Thanks.
Councillor McKelvey?
In favor.
Councillor Lai?
In favor.
Councillor Ainsley?
In favor.
Councillor Crawford?
Favor.
Councillor Mantas?
In favor.
That item carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to our next item, SC 2620, application for fence exemption 21 Carrera Boulevard. We have two deputants. The first is Thana Yoganathan.
To the chair, that speaker has been provided with the audio panels. They just need to click on Connect to Audio at the bottom of their WebEx panel.
Thana, are you able to connect? Okay, we'll try our next deputant and then come back. Our next deputant is Diana Yoganathan.
That speaker is connected. I have now unmuted their phone line.
Hi, Diana, can you hear us? Okay, in the interest of time, we're going to stand on this item while IT works to connect with the deputants. So we'll go to item SC 26.21, request for fence exemption, 26 Bowater Drive. Our first speaker is Miroslav Glavic.
To the chair, it doesn't appear that that speaker is connected. To the chair, that speaker is not present in the session.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to the next deputant, Tony Mantia.
To the chair, that speaker is connected. I have now unmuted their mic.
Hi, Tony. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you all hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Good morning, members of City Council and neighbors. My name is Tony Mantilla. I am the homeowner at 26 Bowater Drive. As a way of background history, my family and I have lived in this house for over 20 years, and the fence has been on the property in this location for 20 plus years as well. The previous homeowners did not have a fence at the rear of the property, and the rear of the property has a retaining wall about 1 meter high. The fence at the time was erected for privacy as the adjoining lot to the rear of the property is approximately 1 meter higher than ours and less than 1 meter away. The retaining wall extends over 3 properties, and we are the property located in the middle of the 3 properties. The understanding is that the bylaw listed in Chapter 447 of the Toronto Municipal Code that addresses fences in the City of Toronto would apply, and that the fence is within said bylaw. The code states in 447-1.2b that no fence described in the table shall, when measured at any point along its length, the average grade level measured perpendicular to 1 meter away from on either side of the fence exceed the height set out in the table for the fence. In building the fence, the goal was to create security and privacy for our family. The fence that measures 2 meters from the base of the retaining wall will not achieve this goal. When the current homeowners moved in a few years ago, they erected a fence approximately 2 meters high on the top of the retaining wall. The height of that fence is higher than the top of the fence in question. The fence in question is not visible from the rear property. If we were to reduce the height of the fence, our property can easily be accessed from the rear property while standing on the retaining wall, and therefore the height is necessary for safety and security. Without the height, someone would be able to hop the fence and access the property. The fence also provides aesthetics as it masks the overgrowth between the 2 fences. Ultimately, we were requesting that the fence, which has been up for approximately 20 plus years, be maintained for continued privacy, security, safety, and aesthetics. The only recent adjustments that have been made to the existing fence are maintenance and aesthetics on our property, and the fence has no impact on any other property. In addition, the neighbor to the right of us had a similar issue and received permission from the city to maintain their fence, which is approximately the same height as the fence in question. We believe a precedent has already been established, so we're asking for the same permission to leave the fence as is. We thank you for hearing us today and look forward to a positive outcome.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, speakers on this item? Speakers on this item? Councillor Mantis, I believe you have a motion.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I have a motion for item. Sorry about that. The recommendation is to allow recommendation number 1 to refuse to grant the application for a fence exemption by the owners of 26 Bowater Drive to permit the existing wood fence in the rear yard, which does not comply with provisions of City of Toronto Municipal Code, Chapter 447, fences, and direct that a second unappealable notice of violation be issued under the City of Toronto Municipal Code, Chapter 447, fences.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mantis. Any additional speakers on this item? Okay, seeing none, we will vote on Councillor Mantis's motion. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. That brings us to back up to the previous item as we had difficulty connecting the deputants. So that is SC 26.20, application for a fence exemption, 21 Carrera Boulevard. Our first speaker was Thana Yoganathan. Okay, so I've been advised that Thana is not speaking, but Diana is, and Diana is connected. Diana, you have 5 minutes.
Diana, your phone line is currently unmuted, so you should be able to speak. Diana, this is the city clerk's office. You are currently connected by phone and you are unmuted on WebEx. Can you please check to see that you're unmuted on your phone?
Okay, we're going to stand down this item again and try to find an alternate means to connect them. So that will bring us back to SC 26.4, status update, Coronation Drive Employment Area, Planning and Transportation Review. We have one deputant, Larry Watmore, President of the Scarborough Community Renewal Organization. Larry, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You have 5 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, councillors. You have our written comments, so in the interest of time, I'll provide a condensed version of those comments. I am the president of the Scarborough Community Renewal Organization, and SCRO is an organization of engaged volunteers that works to connect, promote, and renew Scarborough so Scarborough can be strong and prosperous. We are happy to participate in the review proposed by staff, and we're pleased that staff has specifically noted SCRO as being an important stakeholder in these discussions. SCRO has reviewed the status update report, and we agree with staff that this review is both important and timely, given the concerns caused by recent development proposals in this area. So this review will need to balance economic benefits with community compatibility to ensure the protection of the environmentally sensitive areas within this community. We offer the following comments in support of the process being recommended by staff. Number one, SCRO is interested in participating in the local advisory group, as I just noted. We're prepared to support the process through facilitation and engagement, and by bringing together the highly engaged community associations in this area and the Scarborough Business Association. Number two, structuring the review into the 3 study areas, economic development, community planning, and mobility and safety, is appropriate. Addressing these themes can enable future business and employment opportunities for this area that respect and include the needs of its stakeholders. Number 3, protection of employment lands is important for Scarborough, hence the need for this study. We wish to create the conditions that can enable business opportunities that are compatible with the adjacent residential neighborhoods and the area's natural heritage features. And number 4, a good communications plan will be essential to enable vibrant and thoughtful community engagement and stakeholder support for the final recommendations. We appreciate the opportunity to provide input, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Larry. Any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, thank you for joining us today and sharing your views on this, what I think is an important matter. I'm glad you do too. Questions of staff? Okay, speakers on this item. Okay, so I will speak briefly to this. The genesis of this is that we have an employment zone that was originally developed based on a rail line. And so there are a lot of chemical plants down there. Things came in on rail, they went out on rail, and now that rail corridor has shifted to be primarily passenger and GO train. And now what you're seeing is that it's being fed by trucks. And the problem with that is that the community around it have homes that front and driveways that front onto these streets. And so these streets aren't really great for supporting large volumes of trucks. And the community has fought very hard in the past about proposals that have a large number of heavy-duty vehicles. And so there's been tremendous advocacy from the community, a lot of hard work, and they are looking very keen to see how can we reimagine this employment area for the 21st century. And what does that look like now that it's not fed by rail car anymore? And so I'm really excited by the discussions that are going to take place. I'm glad that the Scarborough Community Renewal Organization is interested in participating in those, as well as the local communities. And you know, we know that this area needs to transform. We know that we have great assets in this end of the city. We have Rouge Park, we have the University of Toronto's Scarborough campus, we have Centennial College, we have the Toronto Zoo. There are many great initiatives that are going on there. I think one of the examples is University of Toronto Scarborough, which, you know, I'm hoping we can have at the table in this conversation as well, is looking to develop EARTH, the Environment and Related Technology Hub. So this is something very similar to MARS, the Medical and Related Sciences. And what we see happening is places like Mars, you have these incubators and then they burst out and they need space. And that's the one thing that we have in this employment zone is space. So high-tech manufacturing, all kinds of great things that can happen through their corporate headquarters. But let's think about what are the needs of the 21st century and how we can bring this area into it. So thank you again to all the community members that have been supportive. I think this is going to be very exciting discussion that will happen over the next little while. Look forward to your support for today. Deputy Mayor Thompson to speak.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add my voice to this very important issue for the community and certainly for Scarborough. As the chair of Economic and Community Development Committee, which obviously our economic development staff will have a role with, along with planning and so on. And of course, I'm really excited to see SCRO involved in this. This is an important organization in Scarborough that provides a voice, and on behalf of the residents in Scarborough, they've done a great job in helping me along the Golden Mile, and Larry and his team have just been absolutely fantastic. There is obviously a need to balance interests here, and obviously, Madam Chair, as you pointed out, the sort of unique nature of the area in terms of the residential component, along with the area, you know, bounded by the tracks and so on, and moving forward in terms of what will this area look like, you know, mixed use development, creating opportunity where certainly that you could have a balance with respect to compatibility between the residential area as well as that of you know, employment and lands, and an area where people will be working and balancing the interests and truck movements along with that of a residential environment. It poses certainly a hazardous and a safety issue. And so it's extremely important for us to take a real strong look at how we can create this this balance of interest between the competing interests in terms of residential interests and that of the commercial and employment interests and so on. And I think that having many voices at the table and different perspective and views, we will counterbalance that in order to come up with what will be a plan that considers all the concerns, both positive and negative, in the best interest of the community area, and of course ensuring that both the economic and the community interest is taken into strong consideration, and that the appropriate tools and measures can be put in place to ensure a safe and a balance of interest in this area. So I thank you for your leadership, Madam Chair, and thank all those who are involved. And by the way, I'll just say this last piece, and that is, this will not be unique to this area specifically in terms of coordination. It will also be that other areas in the city will go through a similar type of transition. And it's extremely important in terms of how we balance the interest to ensure the overall safety and ensure at the same time that we create jobs and opportunities. And it's extremely important that we make sure that we do a great job in terms of addressing the concerns that comes as a result of this opportunity. So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Okay, Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, for your support of this initiative. I did thank community. In case I didn't thank staff, I will thank them again. They've worked very hard on this. Any additional speakers on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll call vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. We're going to go back to item SC 26.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Sorry, I've learned through information that's come to my attention that the speakers who had expressed an interest in speaking with respect to item SC 26.20, 21 Carrera Boulevard, are no longer interested in speaking, so the matter could be dealt with. I do have a position on this that I will be presenting to members of Community Council on behalf of this particular address as such.
Okay, great. As this was a timed earlier item, we will return to it, so you can speak and move that motion.
Sure, thank you very much. I'd like to move the recommendation 2, which is to grant the fence exemption to this property. I have visited this location. There are circumstances and or matters that I do not wish to comment publicly on, other than to simply say that the resident at 21 has some great concerns, which I think that if they were to be known to members of community, I believe that you would be sympathetic to the concerns. As the local councillor, my staff and I have been working with the residents here. It's a small lattice that has been placed on the fence, which is regulated height. The lattice is fairly innocuous, quite frankly. It's not obtrusive, it is not impactful, it is not out of character to what exists in the community now. The resident at 21 feels much more assured and safe and secure in that this small piece of fencing material, which is probably, I don't know, maybe 2.5 feet in terms of length, and another 1.5 feet or so, maybe a little bit longer in height, and it is fairly unobstructive in its nature and its intent. It does create a barrier which is of interest to the party at 21. And again, I've had a chance to speak with the owner of this property and also other relatives of the owner. And my staff and I have had a chance to view it. It's not inconsistent with what exists elsewhere in this area and other areas in the community. And the lattice that goes along the fence is just one piece. It's not, it doesn't travel going to the south, and it is just a barrier that creates what is, for the resident at 21, a level of comfort that I believe is appropriate. And I think that it is consistent with respect to lattice that we see around the community. In fact, it is very much in keeping with respect to what I think is appropriate. And for that reason, I'm basically suggesting that we grant the exemption on the fence to this property at 21 Carrera Boulevard. Madam Chair, those are all my my comments on this item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Any additional speakers on this item? Seeing none, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? That item carries. That brings us to SC 26.5, preliminary report 54 to 62 Glen Everest Road zoning bylaw amendment rental housing demolition applications. Our first speaker is Helen Porter.
To the chair, that speaker is present. I am now unmuting their phone line.
Hi, Helen. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning, Madam Chair, councillors. I want to thank you for this opportunity As you know, my name is Helen Porter, and I live at 62 Glen Everest Road, one of the properties expected to be demolished. I'm also a member of ACORN, which is an organization of low and moderate income people fighting for change. The 3 buildings under consideration provide low-income households with an opportunity to remain in the community. If these 3 buildings are demolished, we have nowhere to go in order to maintain our residents in this community. I am within walking distance of my family physician and my pharmacy. I don't drive. If you demolish these 3 apartment buildings, I have nowhere to go, and neither do the 68 other families that you're going to displace. I've been reviewing rental properties throughout the city as I live in a bachelor apartment, and I currently pay 47% of my annual income in rent. If I have to move, I would suddenly have to pay at a minimum 65% of my annual income in order to procure other housing. These properties have been around for a number of years. Nobody's saying that they're not older properties. But are you going to ask the gentleman who's lived in this building for 53 years, raised his children here, mourned the loss of his spouse here, to suddenly have to move? What about the multi-generational families that live in this building, where the son and the daughter moved into these buildings in order to support their 94-year-old parents? We have other residents in 54 who have pets, who are afraid that if they have to move, their pets won't be allowed to go with them. These pets are their families. We live in our homes. These are not just apartments or lodgings for us. This is our community. This is our space. We're asking you to stop the evictions. This developer has other properties in this community that they could develop first, which would provide us with an opportunity to move into those buildings and remain in the community. We're asking you to stop the evictions and allow us to remain in our homes. And I want to thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant? Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, Helen, I really appreciate you and some of the other residents coming out today. I do recognize, the stress, the challenges that are facing you. Now, I just want to, just so you and others know that what is before us, there's no decision whatsoever before us. This is really a decision to begin a public consultation process, which is a consultation process to start reaching out to you and people in the community. So you realize we're not making a decision today on this. I just want to make sure you're aware of that.
Yes, I do understand that, but you need to look at this in the long term, not the short term. Our children that live in these buildings are just getting back to some sense of normalcy. When this development if it's allowed to proceed, starts, you're going to have to uproot those children again from the school that they attend now, from their friends, and ask them to move into a community that they might not know. This is going to have a long-term effect on those kids. And once these buildings are removed and a new development is put in place, you're going to increase the number of children who are going to have to be sent to the school in our neighborhood, which may not be in a position to support an influx of students. We have homeowners who live across the road from these buildings who are not going to be able to access their driveways if construction begins in these areas. We already have a development being built right next door to 62 Glen Everest, where every time they put a new floor in, there's lineups of concrete trucks delivering concrete. They block off access to the street at one end. You're going to do the same thing with developments in this area. This means that, as I say, the homeowners across the road will not be able to get into or out of their driveways if there's construction. We already have a parking problem because of the construction guys working on the construction next door. This is only going to be exasperated by a new construction. So, you know, we're asking that you give real serious consideration to the amount of time that's going to be necessary for these buildings to be built. And where are we supposed to go when nobody wants to offer us housing? There's no housing in this community that would accommodate another 68 families.
No, and listen, and I do respect your concerns, valid concerns, absolutely. And I think as we go through the process, again, with the community consultation, part of this, we'll be able to hear more from you and other residents. So I want to thank you for doing that. Now, I just also wanted to mention, have you had the opportunity, you as a tenant, and all the tenants have a lot of rights that you have through provincial and city regulations and bylaws. Have you come, I've had 2 community meetings, one outside and then one inside a couple of days ago. Have you come to any of those and spoken with the city staff? Yep.
Yes, I was at your on Tuesday evening,
Okay.
or on Monday evening rather, and I do understand the compensation package that's available.
Yep.
But as I said, that compensation package, if I have to move out of this community, is not going to provide me with any security.
Yeah.
I know there's an uptake on the amount of rents that you will provide, but you know, if I have to move into something that's taking 65% of my limited resources on a monthly basis, whatever you give me isn't necessarily going to improve my living conditions.
No, I understand.
Or
Again,
else.
no, so I do recognize that. And again, part of, if you're at the meeting, one of the things, and this is for the benefit of maybe some of our other colleagues as we're going through the process, is to look at those options. So the big option, of course, is the displacement, where you may have to move away, you know, for 2 or 3 years or whatever the construction period is, and you will have the right to come back to the new apartment with the same rents. But the challenge, of course, is you want to live in the community. So, as I mentioned to you and others at the meeting, that is one of the things we're working out with the developer, with the city, on looking at how, if this is, and this is not even approved yet, so that's the other component, if it's approved, and that's a long way away, that we ensure that everything you've mentioned and everything that you and the residents are talking about, we can try to accommodate. So I just wanted to make sure that you, and along with my colleagues, understand that there's a long way and many, many discussions that have to take place as we move forward with this.
All right. I thank you for your time this morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks I appreciate you coming out, Helen.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Any additional questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to our next deputant, James Campbell.
To the chair, that speaker is not connected to the session.
Okay, our next speaker is Clara Bastarova.
To the chair, that speaker is connected. I am now unmuting their phone line.
Hi, Clara, you have 5 minutes.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the council. Good afternoon. My name is Clara. I live at 54 Glen Everest Road. I'm as well a member of ACORN, same as Helen. We all have the same concerns. What I would just like to point out quickly, as you know, there is a early application for the new development for building 54, 58, and 62 Glen Everest Road, and the developer Altree would like to knock down the buildings and displace the tenants and build a 12-story condo. The application is in the early stages of proposal, which might take anywhere between 18 to 24 months, and clearly a couple of years after that. What our concerns are, the traffic increase in the neighborhood, changing changing the neighborhood altogether. There is a, as Helen has mentioned, from building 62, there has been a development happening right now. There's a condo being built. The traffic is unbelievable. And we have a quite lovely front yard on our building in 54, and that's being taken care of wonderfully. And we can all sit outside and have our coffee, read our book, and it's very quiet and peaceful, which we really enjoy. And it's a small neighborhood. It's a small community, and I have a daughter that grew up in a community and goes to the same school, and would be unfortunate to change that. It is very difficult to find affordable housing in a neighborhood and all over the city, basically, as you all know. So what I'm asking a council to stop this demolition and support us as a community. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there questions of the deputants? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to Joan Apps.
To the chair, that speaker is not present.
Okay, that brings us to our final deputant on this item, Ron James.
To the chair, that speaker is present. I am now unmuting their phone line.
Hi, Ron, you have 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you very much. Myself, I live at 58 Glen Everest. I'm also a member of ACORN, which, as you've heard, is an organization for low to moderate income fighting for change. Now, I'm asking the council today, first, actually, before I ask the council, I'd like to thank, actually, our councillor Gary Crawford, along with Graham Haynes and Gina Eng. They came out July and also this last Monday to listen to our concerns and also tell us about some of the rights that we do have and how this process is going to go about. So I'm pleading for you, though, to save my home and stop this eviction because, as you know, there's not only is there an affordable housing crisis within the city, it's also just a housing crisis in general. And when I talk about a housing crisis, I don't actually mean just into Toronto. It's actually going into outside surroundings towns, and actually in there, it's finding it very difficult to find anything. Now, in these 62 units that they're planning to demolish, many of them are either, as myself, on ODSP, pension, or some other form of assistance. And I'm paying $1,050 at the moment, and there's nowhere in the city that I'm going to be able to find anything close to that. And it's not even in regards to the affordable housing, just trying to find a house in general. So what I find and I fear is going to happen to many of these residents here is not only will they not be able to find anywhere, if they're not going to be able to be accepted anywhere unless you have excellent credit, and I don't blame the landlords for that. They're going to pick who they believe is the best candidate and the best credit. And there's many people here that don't have excellent credit, but when it comes to renting our units, we are on time and we're able to pay these. But what I believe will happen is there's going to be a lot of homeless that will end up happening in here for that 3 years of being displaced from our neighborhoods and possibly from the city and maybe even the province just due to the housing crisis. And in those 3 years, where do we go when nobody will accept somebody without excellent credit, possibly $50,000 plus a year that they're making? And of course, if I'm the landlord, I'd pick that too. Now, actually, on a personal note, my mother is 72 years old. She lives at Pell Street, which is just down the street. And she needs me and my family to be nearby because she has diabetes. She's had multiple heart attacks. She's had her kidneys fail. She's had cancer. She has fibromyalgia. She has osteoarthritis. She has many litany of conditions. And if we're not by here, that puts her in grave danger. And as you know, not just in the community, but also in Toronto, it's impossible to find anything, even if you do have good credit. there's 20 people looking for that one apartment. And people here that are on ODSP and whatnot will not be able to be accepted, let alone find it. Also, there's also a parking problem. Already there's parking issues, not just because of the construction that's going on at the end of 62, the building that's going on up around there. Even before that, there was parking issues because there's a lack of parking for these buildings. And if you demolish these down and there's going to be more construction traffic, the ones that are at 48 and 52 Glen Everest, they'll have absolutely nowhere to park because there's a lack of parking there. So in conclusion, I'd like to, myself and other fellow Acorn members, I'd like to plead with you to stop this eviction, stop the displacement. But if you do decide to propose and accept this, then please have some sort of worst case scenario where Altry is been proposed already to demolish the Days Inn that's right nearby. That maybe before the shovels go in the ground, before the eviction happens, that we can move over there into that property until the 3 years is done and we can come back into this building. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. Are there any questions of the deputant? Okay, seeing none, that concludes deputants on this item. We'll move to questions of staff.
I just have one question, Madam Chair. Okay. I just want to ask staff, now this is a preliminary report and it really just outlines the beginning of a consultation process. And again, this is a long process, going to take a number of years. But again, I don't think we've ever had a preliminary report refused in the past. So can you just tell me what the ramifications of that mean? If we said no to this today, does that mean this development is stopped, is dead, it doesn't move forward? Can you just explain that? Because I think it's important that the residents who are on here understand a bit about the process.
Paul Zuliani responding to the question.
Hard to hear you, Paul, sorry. I can't. I don't know if anybody else can. Very, very
We'll
faint.
see if IT can correct that. We can barely hear him as well.
Hi, Paul. This is the host. It sounds like you might have a mic plugged in. Is that what you're using? And if that's the case, if you could bring the mic closer to your mouth, please, if it's on the headphones that you're wearing.
Very good. How's the audio now?
That's good, Paul.
Thank you. I apologize. Madam Chair, or through the chair, the issue with deferring or refusing a preliminary report is that it is actually part of the normal process that we follow. It is a requirement to go out to a community meeting as part of a application process. If we frustrate the application and there is an appeal, then the city can be viewed as slowing down the process or frustrating the process, and that would not be viewed positively if the applicant did appeal to the tribunal. In most cases where this has come up, legal has advised that it is not generally an appropriate approach to take on these applications. And if you would like, Mark Peel on the phone call may also wish to advise on that matter.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind, Paul. Again, it's just really for clarification with there are a number of people who are listening today, and I think it's important that they understand the process or the pros and cons of where we're at right now.
Yes, good morning. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you, Paul.
Yeah, so just further through you, Madam Chair, just further to Mr. Zuliani's comments, under the Planning Act, there's no statutory entitlement available to the municipality to halt the process once an application is filed with the municipality. In fact, once the application is filed with the municipality, there are a number of milestones under the Planning Act for which govern matters such as an applicant's right to appeal a non-decision. And furthermore, further to what Mr. Zuliani also alluded to, there's a requirement for the municipality to go out to the public and hold a consultation meeting as well, required under the legislation. There's nothing in the statutory documentation that would permit a municipality to prevent those events from happening.
Great, thank you. Those are all my questions, Madam Speaker.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Crawford. Any additional questions of staff on this item? Okay, seeing none. Speakers on this item?
Yeah, I'll speak, Madam Speaker. I do have a motion. And this motion is a typical motion just to extend the notification area to 300 meters instead of the legislated 120 meters, which will mean it'll expand the notification as we get into the process of consultation on this particular site. And first of all, I do want to thank the residents from Glen Everest who came out today to express their concerns, their anger, their frustration, all the feelings that they have been going through since this application came in a number of months ago. And I feel that frustration as their representative. I have been out twice so far, and I'll be continuing to go out, not only with myself, but with some very capable city staff on the rental replacement policy section to really, number one, talk to the residents about their rights. They absolutely have rights. They have protections within provincial legislation, within city legislation and bylaws. And one of our goals through the consultation is to sit down really with every resident of those houses to discuss the rights and that they actually have, and to make sure that they're very well informed of the process. So there's two processes happening here. There's one which is the building, the potential, the development application itself and the building, along with the rental replacement process. So there's two separate processes are happening at the same time. As I've stated to the residents who I've met already, I'm not going to be supporting any development application unless on the rental replacement side there is support from the residents on that whole process. So, and again, as I said, this is a process we're just starting, and we want to ensure they're all informed. So this is the beginning of a process. This is easily, I don't think we'll see a decision coming to this community council for at least 2 years, maybe even longer. But during that time, a lot of work has to happen, not only with the residents at Glen Everest, but I think the overall community, because as you, my colleagues, as you've heard, in any development application, whether it's rental or condo or otherwise, there are a lot of factors that we have to look at, and that really involves the full input from the entire community. So that's the process we are just starting out. What I also do want to recognize as we begin this process, and this is a larger city issue, this is a larger community issue, along Kingston Road, which we've already identified as a major thoroughfare for development and for intensification. What is happening? So I have now 4 applications, rental replacement applications along Kingston Road. What that means is a developer is coming in wanting to put up a new building, but they are replacing existing rental units. And the vast majority of these rental units are all affordable housing. So there is a concern not only with the residents of Glen Everest, but I think overall in Birchcliff and in Cliffcrest and Cliffside of the displacement, probably temporarily if these developments are approved, and where do these individuals go in the community? That is a greater concern to me when you're looking at, especially with Glen Everest, but when we're looking at, as I said, 4 applications and more are coming from what I'm sensing. And there could be some coming in your wards too, especially along Kingston Road. And what do we do on the issue of affordability in the city? That's a bigger question that I think we are all tackling as councillors and as a city. But I'm starting to see that in local communities where this kind of change that I think is happening as part of the growth of the city, but the impact to local residents who are really concerned about these affordable apartments that they have had and the potential of losing them. Now, there are a lot of protections that we have in the city to ensure that we do not lose rental and affordable housing in the city. But as you start seeing these happening in communities, Upwards of 200-300 people are now potentially going to be impacted just in my ward alone. I think we have to recognize those challenges. We have to look forward, as communities, as individual applications, but I think as a city on how do we deal with this. I will be sitting down, I think I've mentioned to this community members, with the Housing Secretariat to look at this bigger challenge as we're starting to see these replacement units taking place in these applications. So on that, again, I just want to thank the residents for coming out. It's a long process. I do encourage these residents who are, whether it's at Glen Everest or some of the other applications, to reach out to my office so we can sit down and have these individual and community conversations about what your rights and your protections are. So on that, I want to thank you and everybody for coming out. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Any additional speakers on this item? Okay, seeing none, we will first vote on Councillor Crawford's amendment. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. We'll vote on the item as amended. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. That brings us to our last item, SC 26.14, Morningside Avenue, St. Clair Avenue, and Warden Avenue speed limit bylaw revision. We have one deputant. I know they weren't on earlier. I don't know if they've connected now. Miroslav Glavich.
To the chair, that speaker has not joined.
Okay. There's no speakers on this item. Questions of staff? I have one quick question. There was one of the deputations pointed out Port Union Road is not included. However, I have been indicated by staff that that will be done in conjunction with the road widening starting next spring. Can I just confirm that that change will happen at that time?
The chair, that's correct. That's coming later this year to IEC.
Okay, great. Any additional questions on this item? Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? This item carries. That brings us to the bills. I'm going to pass it over to the clerk so that they can walk us through those.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Right, just after the bills, I wonder on a point of order, I'd like to raise a point of order before we close, please.
Okay, and sorry, Councillor Ainsley, you also had your hand up. Did you have something else? Okay, great. So we'll go to the confirmatory bills. Okay, a motion that the Scarborough Community Council pass and declare as bylaws bills 717 to 721 prepared for the September 17th, 2021 meeting 26th of the Community Council. Can I ask somebody to move that? Moved by Councillor Ainsley. All those in favor? All those opposed? That item carries. The confirmatory motion that the Scarborough Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw a confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of the Scarborough Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 26th on September 17th, 2021. Can I have somebody move this motion? Councillor Lai, all those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Okay, that concludes the business. So, Deputy Mayor, you had a point of order?
Yeah, or personal privilege. Madam Chair and members of Community Council and staff, it's come to my attention that a very distinguished member of our planning team has indicated that he will be retiring from the city. It's my understanding it is sometime this month. I'm not 100% certain as to the date. It's just really just come to my attention. And I hope actually it was not true, but my understanding it is true That distinguished individual is Mr. Victor Gottwall, who has been outstanding. Many of us have had the opportunity to work with him on a variety of planning issues in my area. He has done a lot of work. I just really wanted just to confirm that in fact he is retiring, and to say certainly that if he is, certainly that is a decision that he has made, and support him. But we will all miss him tremendously. And I really wanted just to take this opportunity just to say
So much for Victor's quiet retirement.
Paul, no such thing. Your mic is on. You're not muted. I know that was a fact. I just wanted to say that in as much as Victor may have wanted a quiet retirement, I think it's really important for us to recognize our amazing staff members who work for the city tirelessly, and lots of hours that they put in, particularly the work that they do, particularly the planning staff. And you've heard a lot of people today who come in and talk about the impact of planning in their communities and their impact on them on a personal basis and so on. I just wanted to say how gratified I am, having had the pleasure of working with Mr. Gottwall for many, many, many years, and that what a distinguished planner he is. And I know that he is leaving us, and I want to wish him well and wish his family well, wish him great health and all the best in his retirement. I just wanted to take this opportunity, Madam Chair, to simply to say to him, thank you so much. I know that you will be missed, and I wish you well in all of your endeavors going forward. And I hope you have a long and a healthy retirement. I'm hoping you retire to something as opposed to simply retiring from, as I've heard, and I understand that there are studies about people who simply retire from without a purpose and so on. But I know you, Victor, you always have a purpose. So I wish you well. Thank you so much. And thank you for all that you've done. You have been absolutely outstanding. I just wanted to convey my appreciation for all that you've done, and all the best to you. Take good care, Madam Chair. Those are the points I just wanted to make with respect to Mr. Gottwall, and I thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor, for sharing that news with us, and we all wish him well on retirement. Any other orders of business or anything else to add? Okay, that's a wrap. Thank you so much. First meeting back after break. Nice to see all your smiling faces again.